Let's talk about what we mean by drainage basins and drainage divides and why they're useful. Let's start with drainage divides. Probably the most famous drainage divide in the United States is the Continental Divide in the Rocky Mountains. The Continental Divide divides the area where water flows into the Pacific Ocean on one side and into the Atlantic Ocean on the other side. And so in other words, one drop of water that drops on the right here would end up in the Gulf of Mexico. A drop of water on the left here would end up in the Pacific Ocean. And these divides form a pattern throughout the United States. Here's the Continental Divide in the Western United States that you may have crossed across in your travels. If a drop of water drops here, eventually it's going to work its way out to the Pacific Ocean over here, past New Orleans and into the Gulf. And so this entire area shown with the drop shadow here, and even including what we don't see a little bit of Canada, is part of this continental divide that we can trace around both sides of the continent. The one on in the Appalachians is not as famous, but it goes through this area here. And we can define the entire area of the United States that's drained by the Mississippi River and its tributaries. So this would be what we call a drainage basin. There's not everywhere a river within this area here, but if a drop of water lands anywhere, if a raindrop lands anywhere in this area and it doesn't get infiltrated into the ground, it runs off. Eventually it's going to join up with a river that's going to drain out past New Orleans and into the Gulf here. These are very useful because these drainage basins contain smaller drainage basins and smaller drainage basins and so forth. And the nice thing about this is that we can say if there is some problem with river or stream contamination, if we know what drainage basin it occurs in, we know that the source of that pollution had to occur somewhere within that drainage basin. So we've divided the United States into a number of these drainage basins or hydrologic units. And remember, this is not showing the actual rivers themselves, it's showing the areas drained by the rivers. So before we had that big one showing everything drained eventually by the Mississippi River, now we can break out where the Missouri River is draining, number 10 here, the Upper Mississippi, number 7, and the Ohio, number 5 here. And we can look at each of those rivers individually by the area that's being drained by them. And once again, this is so useful for looking at things like contaminated surface water that a lot of organizations like the U.S. Forest Service and the U.S. Geological Survey base a lot of their mapping on these hydrologic units as opposed to administrative boundaries like counties, which aren't as useful for this sort of analysis.